Assalamu alaikum students, welcome to your online English lecture. In today's class, we're going to go through the poem The Road Not Taken, written by Robert Frost. The main idea of this poem is that in this poem, the poet uses the word the road in order to symbolize our journey through our life. The poet says that the path that we do not choose in our life is the road not taken. He describes his feelings about the choices that he had left behind in the past. The path which we choose decides our future. The important message that the poet wants to give us is that the choices that we make impact our entire future. So we have to be very careful in making our choices, because if we regret those choices in the future, there is no way we can come back and change them. Stanza 1. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, and I could not travel both. And be one traveller long I stood, and looked down on one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Okay, so in this stanza, the poet is talking about how he was traveling in a yellow wood once upon a time. Yellow wood here means forest with yellow leaves. And he came across two different paths. He had to choose only one of them. So before starting his journey, he had to stand there for a while and carefully look at both the paths to decide which one would be better for him. This can also bring about the message that the poet wants to convey, is that when we come across two different options in our life, we have to think very carefully before we decide which one we want to take. So similarly, the poet stands there for a while and looks as far as he could on where the path may lead him to. Stanza 2. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. So after considering his options, the poet took the second path that had to him seemed like it would be better than the first one, because it was grassy, which showed that not a lot of people had chosen this path. But as he was passing by them, by that path, he realized that both of the paths were similar to each other, and both had a good amount of people that had crossed over on these paths before him. Stanza 3. And both that morning lay, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden back. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So trodden here means walked over. So the explanation of this stanzas can be that both of the paths that morning seemed similar to the poet, and he realized that there was no footsteps coming back, which told him that once he had taken his decision on which path that he had to move ahead on, he would not have an option to come back. Similarly, in our life, once we choose an option, we must keep moving forward and moving on with our lives. We can never come back and change our decision. So we have to be careful before taking a decision. Stanza 4. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. So in the last stanza, the poet tells us that further on into the future, he would remember standing in the forest before taking the decision, and he would remember it with a deep sigh. He would tell that he had to choose one of the options, and he chose the options that was less traveled by other people. So, and that has made all of the difference in his life. Similarly, in future, when we grow up, We would remember the decisions that we had to take when we were young, and those decisions are very important because they shape us into the people that we are going to become in the future. It is safe to say that her entire future self depends on the choices that we make in our youth. Summary of this poem is that the poem is walking down a road and he has reached a fork. He has to choose only one path, so he stays there for a time and tries to inspect both of the paths in order to decide which one is the best option for him to take. He takes one path and leaves the other for some other day, although he knows that he might never come back. He would go further and further on his chosen path, and that will ultimately lead him into becoming the person he would become in the future. So he felt that his entire future depended on the choices that he had made in his past. Literary devices used in this poem. Number one, symbolism. Two roads in the words two roads in this poem represents two or more choices that we have to take in our life. Alliteration, as you know, that it means alliterations is when we repeat the same sound. Examples are wanted where, in which W sound is repeated, and first for F is repeated, and though that the sound is repeated. The third literary device is repetition. Ages. The word ages is repeated again and again. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. This sentence is repeated in stanza number 1 and 4, and so both of them are examples of repetition. We use repetition in order to emphasize or focus on a point that we want to make. So that is all for today's lecture. See you all next time. Allah Hafiz.